Notre Dame fans, welcome. Welcome to a special Saturday night edition of the Irish Breakdown podcast. I think you know who I am by now. I'm Brian Driscoll. I'm the publisher at irishbreakdown.com. And that guy right there is Vince Dario. He is the football analyst. And we're going to be joined very shortly by our new recruiting director, Ryan Roberts. It's going to be the first show we've had as a three-man crew. And I can't wait until we get Sean on here one of these days.
I know,
and
right?
We have all four of us here ready to rock and roll. So, boy, it's been a busy, not even 48 hours since our last show. And we have, some of it is stuff that we expected to happen. Some of it is we hoped would happen. And others is just kind of some things have kind of come up lately. And we're going to talk about all of it. And boy, I got to tell you, Vince, it hasn't been a perfect offseason for Marcus Freeman because, you know, there was one guy that is going pro, but man, it's been pretty close so far.
Yeah, exactly. It's like I keep waiting for the other shoe to drop.
Right.
And it hasn't yet. I mean, it still could, but it's good news after good news.
Yeah.
And it's very exciting for the future.
You know, it's funny. I'm almost conditioned to expect something bad to happen.
Absolutely.
So like last night, you know, Brandon Joseph, I mean, we're going to talk about Harry Hiestand. We're going to talk about Isaiah Foskey, the Ademilolas. We're going to talk about Brandon Joseph. We're going to talk about all of it, right? There was an all-star game today where Notre Dame had 10 players, more than any other school in the what used to be the Army All-American Bowl. I guess it's just the All-American Bowl now. Real creative, real fun, catchy name. And we'll talk about that a little bit too. But, you know, it's kind of interesting, you know, started hearing rumblings that Isaiah Foskey was kind of he was going to leave, then he's going to come back. He's leaning towards leaving, he's leaning towards coming back. But even going into it, even though I had a story written as of Monday, because I was told Monday he was going to probably come back, and then he said he's not going to announce till the 8th. I'm like, man, that's a lot of time and everything.
And usually when you schedule an announcement,
it's you're coming back.
I see. I thought it was the other way around.
Usually it's you're coming back.
Okay.
For Notre Dame, it's been that way. For Notre Dame, it's been that way.
Because I remember somebody did like a joint press conference. It was when Golden Tate left, and he went with somebody else. I can't remember who the two of them went at the same time, and they had a press conference.
It was
that
Jimmy.
They were leaving. It was Jimmy. Okay, it was the two of them together, and they had a press conference that they were leaving.
That's a little bit of a different era, and this social media era is kind of where I'm kind of looking at it. But
good point.
You know, it's one of those things where it's like if he was going to leave, he just would have said him, okay, I'm out of here, like Kevin Austin did.
Yeah.
But I still just kind of in the back of my mind, I was not ready to fully buy into it yet, you know, just because I'm a Notre Dame fan and this is the life we've led.
That's fair.
And then last night, you know, everything I'd been told about Brandon Joseph was he was picking Notre Dame. I love Notre Dame. And I got a little bit of some intel yesterday that there's some admission stuff that still has to get worked through because Notre Dame has just insanely stupid, you know, undergrad transfer standards that it's just almost impossible to transfer to Notre Dame as an undergrad. But I was told, like, okay, I think they're going to be okay. But, you know, and then he announces last night that he's making his decision. And my first thought was, wow, that's great for Notre Dame. By 30 minutes later, I had convinced myself it was bad for Notre Dame. You know, but then luckily I got official word that this is what it's going to be. And if you saw when he announced his commitment, we immediately published a story that we had quotes from Brandon. I was able to actually speak to Brandon this morning before he released his commitment thing. So we were able to kind of just talk a little bit and just pick his brain about, you know, why the name. And we'll share a lot of the conversation that he and I had because it was for a story. I mean, we'll share what he and I talked about, you know, that was in the article. And, you know, then, of course, a couple hours later, Isaiah Foskey makes his decision, which comes a day after Jason Ademilolas made his decision, which also is a day later. And when the national media kind of caught up to what Irish Breakdown fans have known for a while now about Harry Hiestand, and we're going to talk about that wild affair because, you know, there's people like, well, you said he wasn't never going to come back. I'm like, yeah, because at the time he wasn't planning on coming back. So we'll talk about all that stuff. And of course, we'll kind of talk about what's next, what we're hearing. Of course, if you're an Irish Breakdown message board member, you already know what we're going to talk about with the receiver coach situation because it was on the message board yesterday. And it's just been a wild. It's been a wild. And I'm like, now I'm kind of like, hey, you know, maybe Marcus Freeman does have a chance to pull off this great wide receiver hire or this other thing because it's like things are going well for him. Now, there's still some big news out there, right? We have not gotten word what Jarrett Patterson's going to do yet. And The latest I'm hearing is that he's leaning towards leaving, but his draft feedback isn't what he had hoped it would be. So there's that decision, which is basically for him is, do I go pro and hope to work my way up the draft board with workouts and interviews like that? Or here's a crazy idea. Come back, play for Harry Hiestand for a year, get his seal of approval a year from now, and not have to be in a draft with the kid from Iowa, the center from Iowa, who's going to be the number one center in the draft most likely. And I think that's kind of the decision he's going to have to make. So that's sort of that final piece to the puzzle this offseason, Vince. But man, what a crazy, I mean, where are we at? Like 30 hours? What we got done with the show yesterday around like 3 o'clock, 2:30.
Yeah.
And 5.5 hours. I mean, not even 30 hours really since we finished our show yesterday. And it's been insane, man. It's been absolutely insane.
And it's been a lot of fun. And that, I mean, whenever I get good news, whether on Twitter or whatever, and it's just been a lot of fun. It's been like, okay, here we go. Let's, it makes, we keep getting the question, can Notre Dame compete in 22? It seems like every hour
so far,
passes,
everything that they need to happen.
I get more confident about it. I mean, I'm not willing to go too far out on a limb just yet, but I get more and more confident about it. Let's just put it that way.
And I hate when people come on this podcast from hotel rooms. Oh, wait, never mind. We did that for a whole week last week, so sorry about that. We got Ryan Roberts, our recruiting director. Thanks for being with us, Ryan.
I'm actually not. Yeah, I'm not even in a room. Honestly, I'm in a hallway right now. So
okay,
making it work.
But he is making it happen because man, there's just too much to talk about to not be a part of it, man. Ryan, we were just kind of talking big picture, man. What an insane 30 hours this has been for Notre Dame with all the news that's either kind of broken and a lot of it Irish breakdown. That's the kind of thing I love about our site is nothing happened that our fans didn't already kind of at least have an idea was leaning in that direction, but still doesn't make it any less sweet.
No, absolutely. I think it's obviously very huge for, just the sorry, 1 second.
It's all good. It's all good, man.
I might have to relocate real quick. I'll be right back on.
It's all good. Yep. So he's trying to make it work, man. He's trying to make it work.
Right? I love it.
He is at a convention and I believe in Texas today. So he wanted to be a part of the show. So we'll figure it out. And Vince, you and I know how difficult it can be to make it work in a hotel. You have a couple super chats. One from Tristan Mize, smelling a 2023 Irish Natty.
Why are we waiting for 23? Why are we waiting? I mean,
yeah,
I'm going to be greedy here.
We'll have some fun conversations about that this offseason. But no, I think that's the look a lot of people are going to. Like, let Coach Freeman go through his first full year. There's going to be some ups and downs.
Of course.
First year of Tyler Buckner. And I get all that. But, you know me, Vince. I'm focused on the here and now. So
absolutely.
We'll see how it goes.
And so many things. First of all, so many things can change between now and the start of 22.
For Notre Dame and their opponents.
Now and the start of 23, it's going to be a completely different team at times.
We don't have a clue who's going to be where or anything like that. Exactly. Tommy Gunn says it's Saturday night. The wife is driving. Let's get it. Love thee. Go Irish. Hella excited. Tommy, you are not alone, my friend. Not alone. Bayside Tigers 6. A lot of factors are going to Foskey coming back, but what percentage of it do you contribute to Freeman? I think that's one of those things that is the ultimate decision maker. And let me explain. And this is just kind of how these things normally work and what the things that I've kind of heard about what went into Isaiah's decision. I think Isaiah was legitimately torn between coming back and going pro. I think a lot of Isaiah wanted to come back for his teammates, some unfinished business. But at the same time, there's people in his ear telling him, you're going to be a first-round pick. And look at the season you just had. And he played through an injury this year. So did Jason Ademilolas, played through injuries this year. And the thought of, you come back, you get hurt. There's always that fear nowadays. But I think also a big part of him wanted to kind of one last ride with his brothers. And then, one of the things Brandon Joseph told me in the interview I did with him that was in the article that we published today was he was shocked about how, to a man, the players he spoke with, and we'll dive into why he was having these conversations here in a little bit, said, we're going to win a title next year. Like, that's the thought process that the Notre Dame players have. Now, I don't know if they will or won't, and there's a lot of kids that feel that way. But they were just adamant about it. And that's part of it too. But I think the other part of it is when you're torn, those are the things. Like, this is what I've said, and I've said this in the past. The decision about whether to go pro or come back needs to be about you and what's best for you and your future, either going pro or coming back. It's about what's best for you.
Yeah.
But if you're genuinely torn, then make it about your team.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if you're not sure what to do, then make it about your team. Do you want to play with those guys again or not? Do you want to play for that head coach or not? Do you want to play for that position coach or not? And I think that's ultimately was one of the final things that caused Isaiah Foskey to come back. Now, does he also believe that coming back means he can go be a top 10 to 15 draft pick next year? Yeah, that's part of it too.
Sure.
But if Isaiah Foskey goes out and runs a 4.55 at the pro day, he's going to be a top 15 draft pick this year too because of the production that he had. So I do think things like Marcus Freeman and the fact that the Ademilolas are coming back and Houston Griffith's coming back. I mean, guys that are his teammates, that are guys that he has played with, that he considers his brothers on the team. I think those things certainly help. And I think that Coach Freeman being there and wanting to be part of his first team is a factor. Was it the factor? I doubt it. It that kind
it's
of thing
all part
rarely
of the
is
equation.
that kind of thing.
It's all part of the equation, though, right? I mean, that's there. I mean, you just mentioned all the different pieces and parts that go along with this. It's not just a one factor decision at all for all of these guys, right? And Isaiah Foskey included. I mean, it's all about, okay, what was my response from the, when I submitted about the draft intel? What was it? What could I be next year?
Mm-hmm.
What's my family situation?
Right.
What's the team looking like? Look, if everybody was leaving from Notre Dame and nobody was coming back, that would affect the decision, right? So it's all of those different things.
Right.
And Coach Freeman and the excitement that he has brought to the program and everything, it's all part of it. It's just box after box after box that you check that brings him back.
Yeah. And Tristan Mize is being greedy, Vince. He said, so Tristan said, I'm referring to 22 and 23. I'm feeling greedy too.
There we go.
Now we're cooking with oil, baby. Now we're cooking with oil.
Yeah, I love that.
So I got one more super chat, Vince, and then we're going to dive into our topics. ND Fitz. Thank you for the super chat, ND Fitz. 1 Foot Down podcast enjoys y'all content. Jude is interested in squashing y'all's previous Twitter beef. Curious of Brian's response. I call BS on him wanting to squash our beef, but if he does want to squash our beef or whatever his beef is with me, he knows my email address. Everyone knows my email address. It's literally brian@irishbreakdown.com. Yeah, he can easily email me if he has a problem with that. Beyond that, I have no intention of wasting any more time talking about 1 Foot Down. So if he has that interest, then you tell him to shoot me an email. But other than that, we're gonna move on to things that I actually care about. And that is really, Vince, just the news. And so let's begin with, because I don't think you can just talk about just Isaiah Foskey. I think you need to talk about Isaiah Foskey, Jason Ademilola, and Justin Ademilola.
Sure.
All as one package, because I felt like when Justin announced on Wednesday, and so here's the beautiful thing. I'm told that Notre Dame orchestrated the timing of all these.
I was wondering if it was Notre Dame or if it was the guys amongst themselves or what.
Right.
Yeah.
It was partly Notre Dame. Now, here's the thing, though. They didn't ultimately know what Isaiah's decision was going to be. So they were coordinating it all to lead it. They wanted to make sure that Justin and Jason and those guys got all their things out before Isaiah made his final decision, which I think is masterful planning, in my opinion. But to me, guys, the big thing for me, and Ryan, we'll start with you, is it wasn't just getting Foskey back or just getting Jason back or just getting Justin back. It's getting all three of them back along with the rest of your depth behind. I mean, you lose Myron and Kurt, but you're bringing back a lot of production just in those three guys alone. Because here's the thing. Everybody knows Jason had a great year. He's number 2 on tackles for loss on the team. Everybody knows Isaiah had a big year. But do you know who was number 2 on Notre Dame's roster in sacks this year? Second leading sacker in the team this year? It was Justin.
Number 9.
Was Justin. Yeah, exactly. He had 5 sacks. So to me, Ryan, it was the combination of getting all three that has to raise the excitement for what this defense can be in 2022.
Yeah, I mean, I'd agree completely. I think one thing that maybe a different layer that you could even take it as well is the fact of what's Notre Dame's biggest question mark right now is the fact of, like, we have to replace Kyle Hamilton. I know obviously he didn't play down the stretch. You have to figure out who's the corner opposite Cam Hart. Secondary does have some question marks, and what better to help a young, inexperienced secondary, I should say, even a little more experienced now, then bringing back a strong defensive line. I feel building that up front and the ability to help the guys in the back end is going to be huge for Notre Dame, both in the short and long term, honestly, while the corners develop, while the other safeties develop, while the secondary as a whole develops. I think it's huge for that perspective.
And we have said this for years. I know Ryan agrees, but if you could have an elite secondary and a good pass rush, or an elite pass rush and a good secondary, I'm taking the elite pass rush every single day of the week and 3 times on Saturday.
Because it doesn't matter how good your secondary is. If a quarterback has all day to throw, somebody's going to get open. I mean, that just is what it is.
And we saw that in the bowl game. Notre Dame couldn't get to the quarterback in the second half, and they just shredded that defense apart.
Right. That's exactly right.
Now, to beat Bama, to beat Clemson, to beat Ohio State, you kind of need both.
Yep.
Right? But to get to that point, you start with an elite foundation up front. And that, to me, is the key. And I also think that it sends a signal, too, that, like, hey, this is a place we want to be. This is a hey, we're not money chasing yet because we got bigger fish to fry. And I do believe that the NIL stuff that Isaiah Foskey has gotten in the meantime did factor into his decision to come back, because he's not going to, having to be, digging into cushions to get, Big Mac money because of the NIL. Right.
Yeah, true.
Yeah. And same with Jason and Justin. I mean, they got good deals this year. So I think that stuff to me factors into it as well, but it had to start up front.
Brian, one thing that I'm really excited about too is for Jason's perspective, just Jason talking here for a second. Like, obviously he had a lot to prove going into the season because he had played and been productive when he played, but he hadn't played a high volume of snaps, right? So like, that's a little chip. I think that Jason, and this is just from my conversations with some people outside and kind of people close to the situation, he was not happy with where the NFL valued him this offseason, right? So I think that another second year of full volume for Jason Ademilolas with an additional chip on his shoulder, I'm excited to see what type of player he could be next season.
Yeah, because, midway through the season this year, if you'd have asked me 5 games through the year, who has a better chance of coming back, I'd have said Foskey. I mean, Jason was playing. Ryan, you know this. Jason was leaving. I mean, because he was dominating and he was getting really good feedback from certain parts of the draft world. But when it came down time by the end of the season, it was just he wasn't getting the love that people thought. And I would argue that Isaiah Foskey has a chance to go from late 2, early 1, or excuse me, late 1, early 2. That would have made no sense. Early 1 to late 2. That's a pretty big gap.
That's a bit. Way to go out on a limb, Brian.
Early 1 to late 4 is kind of the range for Mr. Draft Expert. No,
late 64 picks, not a big
right. Late 1 in that. That you guys know how the draft is, right? It just takes that one team to fall in love with you. Like if Joe Tryon can be a first-round pick last year, Isaiah Foskey can be a first-round pick this year, right? Sure. But because it's such a deep edge class, he has a chance to me to go from like early 2 to top 10 to 15. I think Jason can go from day 3 to early day 2 next year with another jump in production. And that's the big thing for Jason is Isaiah needs to just keep doing what he's doing, but just refine his game a little bit. Jason needs to finish better. He actually has a chance to have a big jump in production. And I think he needs it because as disruptive as he is, I think there's a lot of room for his production to still get better. And I think that's the thing he's going to have to prove next year is make more plays at the ball, not just disruptive as like you're making a guy cut to someone else or that kind of thing. Yeah. So that's the thing that has me kind of fired up, Ryan, to your point is I actually think Jason has another jump left in his game.
For sure.
Isaiah's not going to have 19 sacks next year, right? I mean, his jump in production isn't going to really happen, most likely. Jason has room for a big jump in production, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think from a draft scope for a second, me and Vince actually talked about this, right? Like I felt like there's a trajectory, and they're not the same type of athlete, they're not the same story, obviously. But Aiden Hutchinson would have been a second-round pick last year, right? If he would have came out despite the injury. He vaults obviously into a potential top 5 pick, although that's a little insane in my opinion. But I think Isaiah Foskey could be in the same ballpark. Like we're talking a early to mid second round pick potentially if he went out. There's no reason with his skill set that he can't be 10 to 15. And to your point, Jason, I mean, I don't understand what the NFL is seeing right now with him. To be very honest with you, I don't understand the feedback that he's getting because I've heard the the majority, and this, I guess, a little bit of an inside stuff, is I'm hearing 5th round grades, the majority around the league on Hiestand and Ademilolas.
Crazy.
I don't get it. I don't.
Right.
Because if you would have asked me midseason, also, if he would have came to me and, from a semi-advising role, I would have said, like, I think you're good enough to leave right now. Like, right this second, you could leave, and you could be a potential 3rd round, top 3-round pick, top 100 guy. But for whatever reason, they don't see it. But like you said, he has a big chance. And I think another big picture to that is how is he going to improve his pass rush production or just tackle for loss production? All, the penetration perspective. He's got all his guys back, man.
Right.
Like, he's got all his guys back. And Kurt Hinish, although he was a really good football player for Notre Dame, you're going to get more athletic next to him too.
Right.
So really need to account for a lot of guys in that D-line right now, which means potential more one-on-one opportunities for him.
And look, here's another bit of news that we put out yesterday, which isn't super, super shocking, but something that we put out on the message board is what I'm being told from multiple sources close to the Notre Dame program is that Riley Mills is bumping out to Big End next year.
Right.
And I loved Myron Tagovailoa-Amosa this year. He battled through injuries, battled through some personal stuff. Phenomenal young man, phenomenal leader. But Riley Mills, to me, is going to be a more disruptive player at Big End than what they got this year, which just adds another layer to it, And, you've got Jacob Lacey now another full year removed from his shoulder surgery. You've got Gabriel Rubio and Aiden Keana a year older. Howard Cross gets another year in the weight room. I mean, boy, and then did anybody watch Tyson Ford and Aiden Gabera today in the All-American game? I mean, those dudes are not going to be like redshirt me for a year. No, they're going to come in and want to play. So it's really exciting to just, 5 years ago, before 2018, there were some linemen here and there, but one of the mantras was, well, Notre Dame just can't recruit elite defensive linemen. And now we're talking about Gabriel Rubio 5 years ago plays 300 snaps as a true freshman. And this year he couldn't get on the field.
No
5 years ago, Aiden Keana plays 200 snaps as nose tackle. Now he can barely get on the field. And it's not that they can't play. It's just they're absolutely loaded up front. And, man, that's a great place to start. A great place to start and build your defense out. Now, here's the other thing. One of the problems in the bowl game was you were able to kind of get the ball out quickly, max pro, get out of the pocket, and take advantage of some one-on-ones at safety and corner. The corner issue we'll address down the road. One of the safety ones, though, however, was cleaned up by Notre Dame getting Brandon Joseph. And I remember I was in Arizona. It was right after the Notre Dame bowl game, I believe. I was pulling into In-N-Out Burger with my nephew because my nephew had never been to In-N-Out Burger, right? So I took him there, and because he was all excited about it. His parents had told him about it. He'd never been. He thought they were only in California. So I took him to In-N-Out Burger like the second night we were there. Loved it. So when we're leaving the game, he sees another In-N-Out. He's like, hey, let's go to In-N-Out Burger. And he was bummed about the game. So I was like, all right, let's cheer him up. So we're pulling into In-N-Out Burger, and Ryan sends me a text message. I think it was that day, or was it early? It was the day before when we were, I think that's when it was, but I could be wrong on the timeline. But anyway, Ryan sends me a text message like, man, it'd be great if Notre Dame could get in on this. He goes, I think it was like unlikely, but it'd be nice if Notre Dame can get in on this guy. And it's the text of Brandon Joseph announcing he's leaving Northwestern.
Yeah.
And this is a 2020 All-American. And I'm like,
on New Year's Eve. So
it was New Year's Eve, so it would have been the day before.
Yeah.
And so, and I'm like, yeah, it'd be nice, adding an All-American safety. And here we are barely a week later, and Brandon Joseph is committed to Notre Dame too, which again fills a hole that got exposed a little bit in the bowl game, Ryan. And you've done a deep dive. If you haven't been on our site today, Ryan did a NFL draft evaluation type of film breakdown on Brandon Joseph. You're gonna have to check it out. So Ryan, give us a little bit of just kind of your thoughts. Again, 2020 All-American, had 6 interceptions in 2020, 3 last year, so 9 interceptions the last 2 years playing in the Big Ten. If you haven't seen the disgusting interception he had in the Big Ten title game in 2020, you got to check it out. But Ryan, just talk to us about just what you see from Brandon Joseph and how he fits in. What does he add to the Notre Dame defense?
Well, I think it's a really interesting conversation because people are going to say he's replacing Kyle Hamilton, and I've heard you guys talk about it a bunch. Kyle Hamilton didn't play the last 6 games, 7 games?
Really, yeah, 7
games. So he didn't play 7 games. So he's replacing, who was the replacement.
DJ Brown, Houston
Yes.
Griffith, that's who he's replacing, yes.
Exactly. So he's replacing the replacement to Kyle Hamilton for one. And he's an immediate upgrade, in my opinion, because when I was looking in the summer, I put him in multiple first-round mock drafts because I was that big on this kid, because you had seen what he did in 2020, which was his first year redshirt freshman season, was a season that obviously the Big Ten was heavily affected by, COVID-19 and cancellations and rescheduling and all that type of stuff in a very, very small sample size of him. And I think that what he brings to the table from a stylistic perspective is he's played anything from too high to single high, down into the slot, play man-to-man. But I think that what his biggest trait for me is I think that he has some incredible diagnostic skills playing in the deep zone. I think that he really does a lot of his best work on the roof. I would like to say that there's a difference between being a proactive football player and being a reactive football player. He's very proactive. He always seems to just kind of be in the right spot at the right time, especially in 2020. Now, 2021, it was a little more up and down, to be very honest, but I think you still saw good film, in my opinion. I think that a lot of it is the fact that Northwestern was just not a good football team. There was, on the second level, losing Patty Fisher, losing Gallagher, losing the players, Greg Newsome at corner, losing all the talent that they did from the year before. I think they overcompensate. He tried to overcompensate at times.
I'm glad you said that, Ryan, because that was the thing I noticed. So many more missed tackles from him this year. He was out of control a lot more. It seemed like he was trying to cover a lot, like cover what was happening in front of him.
Cover
there was
four.
a clear cover four others. Yeah,
right,
not play
right.
cover four or playing coverage.
Just wanted to clarify.
He was clearly trying to make up for what was he. It's like when Jalen Smith's a perfect example, right? Jalen Smith couldn't make as many plays as his talent would have dictated, which is why he never had. Think about this: Asmar Bilal's highest tackle for loss season is better at Notre Dame than Jalen Smith's, because he was always having to cover for somebody else. Ultimately, it made him not as effective, and also it hurt the defense because he couldn't make plays. That's what I saw, because in 2020, they were such a good defense all around. You had Patty Fisher, or I always want to say Patty Mullen because of the guy that played Notre Dame back in the day. But Patty Fisher, Blake Gallagher inside, everybody just Greg Newsome outside. You could just do your job. Yeah. And when he could just do his job, he was great. When he had to kind of freelance, it's like he tried to be Kyle. They asked him to be Kyle Hamilton this year, and he's not Kyle. Nobody is.
I was going to say.
Nobody.
That's a tall ask for anybody.
Who else needs to try to find a Kyle Hamilton? All 129 other teams in college football, right?
Right.
He's a unicorn. And to me, at Notre Dame, however, with Cam Hart, with the linebackers we expect Notre Dame, with the D-line, he's going to be able to go back to being the player he was in 2020, which is, Brandon, just do your job, right? Communicate. I love the fact he was a captain last year as a true junior. That to me matters to me at a place like Northwestern. But the fact that he's going to be able to, hey, man, we don't need you to be Kyle. We don't need you to be this. We don't need you to do it. We need you to do you. And I think that's going to help him get back to being what he was. Because we saw what he was in a great defense. He was great. We saw what he was when he had to try to be the guy in a bad defense. And that rarely goes well. So that's why I'm excited to see him, because there's the film in 2020 and 2021 is way different. And it's not that he looks slower or his transitions are bad. It's that he's trying to do things outside the framework of the defense in 2021 because he knew the rest of the defense was not going to be there. Because not only did they lose, this is what we don't talk about enough, not only did they lose the players that we talked about, Ryan, but they lost a really good veteran defensive coordinator after 2020 as well. And I think that factored into this decision as well. So, I mean, to me, all those things, when Mike Hankwitz retired, I mean, to me, that also combined with all the production and that they lost from that front seven and a first-round pick at corner, I mean, it was too much on his plate. And I think that's why coming to Notre Dame is going to be so big for him, because he can just be himself.
There's a comment in the chat I want you guys to address, because I think this is it's a fairly common thing. And so Khalid, thanks for the comment. And all this excitement for a low 3-star transfer from Northwestern, winning the Fiesta Bowl would have been much more important. I want you guys to address this, please.
What? I don't.
He was a consensus All-American in 2020.
I know.
I mean,
I don't even know where to start with that because I'm not even looking at the first part. I'm like,
Khalid, I'm not meaning any disrespect by this, man. Yeah. I just kind of, come on, man. You know who else is a 3-star recruit? Mac Jones. Would you have been okay if he would have transferred to Notre Dame this year instead of going pro?
Well, Fuller. There's a lot of 3-stars that
Jeremiah Koromoa was a 3-star, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
Recruiting rankings are not the be-all, end-all of talent once you get to college.
Right.
I mean, that's the bottom line. Rankings are all about what you were in high school.
Right.
He's 3 years
Julian
removed.
Love was a 3-star recruit.
Yeah.
And Brian wasn't Kyle Hamilton a 3-star until pretty late into the recruiting process there
as a junior, well, not by me, but yeah, he was a 3-star early. By the time his senior season rolled around, he'd been to some camps. He was back to being a 4-star and eventually became a 5-star by 247. But I mean, look, that stuff just doesn't matter to me. I mean, we have so much evidence that that's not indicative of who you are. And honestly, Khalid, I honestly would be understandable of Khalid's concern if he was transferring from like the MAC or the Mountain West, where you're just not quite sure how his talent level is going to transition. I think that would be I would be more on board with Khalid, kind of like what we were with, because I guess I can't say he was a consensus All-American as if that's some kind of counter, because that's exactly what was said about Kane Madden, and I rejected it. So if I'm being consistent, I just can't use that. So let me kind of get back from like my initial kind of reaction to that and say the fact that he played in the Big Ten, played in the Big Ten title game, has played against the talent he's played against and played at the level he has, good and bad, because playing in the Big Ten sometimes exposes you. If all you saw of him this year was the game against Michigan, then you're probably not super pumped about this kid coming to Notre Dame. But if you watch his entirety of his last 2 seasons, then you're like, this kid can really play. And you know, so that to me, Khalid, is I don't care about the 3-star ranking, because I could point to you several Notre Dame All-Americans. I think we would all take another Julian Love at cornerback, right?
Absolutely.
3-star recruit, number 480 player in the country, right? I think we would all take another Jeremiah Koromoa coming out of high school, right? Again, a 3-star recruit. So the kid can play, right? The film tells you that story. And we could go down a long list of guys that were 2- and 3-star recruits become great players. I'm not saying you only recruit Brandon Josephs, but there's a reason Notre Dame pushed as hard for this kid. And it isn't about recruiting rankings. It isn't about him being a 2020 All-American. They looked at the film and said, this kid, to Ryan's point, this kid can play over top, which that's the one thing more than anything else that they lost when Kyle went out. Nobody else could really play center field, because Ramon, I think, will be able to eventually do it because he's so athletic.
I agree with that.
But it takes some nuance. It takes some feel for the position.
He's still a bit of a step slow because he's new to the position.
Reactionary wise. And that was Ryan's point. He is a reactive. He is not a reactive player. He's an instinctive, proactive player. Ramon is still reactive. He can make plays because he's so fast. But he's not a guy you necessarily want playing center field all the time with the lack of experience. Now, maybe in 2021, 2022, it'll be a different story as he gets more experience playing safety. But when Kyle went out, they lost that center fielder. Brandon can be that guy, but it's not all he can do. He can play the alleys. He can play the slot. He can do a lot of different things. And the thing I loved about his 2020 film, Ryan, more than anything, was he seemed to always be around the ball. Not even on plays where he was necessarily getting picks, but he just was always around the ball. And, there's probably 2 or 3 more interceptions I think he could have had if just, one thing or 2 things would have gone differently. And that's the thing that I think also they lack. Ball skills and the ability to play center field are 2 things practically he adds that they didn't have once Kyle was gone.
Right. Now, one more practical. Go ahead, Ryan. Go ahead.
Oh, no, I was going to say it's a great point. I think that even the things that are maybe viewed as the negatives or the areas of improvement in his game, you mentioned the missed tackles a little bit. It's not by lack of effort. Like he plays with his hair on fire. It's the opposite issue. Yeah.
Right. It's that sometimes he goes, and that's why I think this year it hurt him, because he was coming too fast. Like he felt I got to get downhill now. I got to get downhill now because the guys once it got, last year he was more patient getting downhill. And so you didn't see nearly as many missed tackles. It's when he goes out, and you talked about this in your film breakdown, Ryan, is at times he goes in a little out of control, head hunting instead of break down, come to balance, drive through contact. And I think those are things that are going to have to get worked out of him a little bit. And no question.
And then one more little piece to clean up here. 20 was that LJP wants to know how much eligibility does Brandon Joseph have?
Technically he has 3 years. Yeah, because he redshirted in 2019.
Right.
2020 doesn't count. So 2021 was technically a redshirt freshman season. Now, Brandon Joseph will not be at Notre Dame for 3 years.
I wouldn't think that would
be. I think if you're Notre Dame, you're hoping he's here for 2.
Yeah.
But you're planning for the fact that you may only have him for 1. Because if he's as good as Ryan thinks he is, and Ryan and I are on the same page of what he can do, the difference that Ryan and I have is Ryan sees him as a potential first-round pick. I see him as not quite that level athletically, just for me. But we both agree he's a really, really good player. I think the hope that you have if you're Notre Dame is is that, if I'm right, he's a 2-year, really good 2-year Alohi Gilman type of player, right? Meaning not they're different players, but I'm talking about the impact that Alohi had. If he's what Ryan thinks he is, he's here 1 year. And I'm going to be honest with you. I'm hoping Ryan's right on this one because recruiting safety has been an issue for Notre Dame. If they can produce 2 first-round safeties in back-to-back draft classes, that makes recruiting the safety position a whole lot easier, in my opinion. So this is one where I actually hope Ryan is right. We're talking degrees. I think he's a 3rd-round pick. Ryan thinks he's a 1st-round pick. Either way, it's a huge improvement for the Notre Dame defense.
Yeah, exactly.
You guys understand what I'm saying on that one? Does that make sense as far as saying that we disagree to a degree? You know what I mean? So
for sure.
Okay. So yeah, I mean, big one for the defense.
Well,
last couple days, right? Go ahead, Ryan.
Oh, sorry. I think I'm on a little bit of a delay. I was going to say I think it really does stick with recruits, obviously, too. Just kind of speaking from that standpoint for a second. You mentioned producing Kyle Hamilton and Brandon Joseph, maybe in back-to-back first-round type of players. But I mean, I spoke to Peyton Bowen, and that was one of the first things he told me was, "I want to be Kyle Hamilton." You know what I mean? So just kind of another little note, just wanted to add in there.
Yeah. It matters. That stuff matters to kids, absolutely. Vince. I mean, we've talked about that all the time.
Yeah.
That's what helped Notre Dame recruit, even when Harry Hiestand left, was the thought that if you go to Notre Dame, you're going to be a first-round draft pick in the NFL. I mean, that's not true because there's a lot of kids that didn't become that, but it's just that's what every top player thinks is, oh, I'm going to be the next Kyle Hamilton, right?
Right.
And
absolutely.
so now you go into Denton Ryan High School or Denton Geyer High School, where everybody in the country is trying to get this kid, and Notre Dame gets a safety out of Texas. Like, I mean, it's been a while since Notre Dame got a skill player out of Texas. I think the last time Notre Dame got a non-tight end lineman type of guy out of Texas, I believe, was Nick Watkins back in the 2014 class.
That's been a while.
And then the year before that, it was Torrey Hunter Jr. I mean, it's been a minute since Notre Dame has gotten a skill kid out of the state of Texas.
So let's talk about the safety depth now, because we were having issue going into this offseason with what the safety depth chart was going to look like. And now Houston's coming back, DJ's coming back. They're bringing in a transfer. Obviously, they've had guys move, to safety from other positions. So what are we looking like for the depth? And do we see anybody moving out of the safety position potentially?
Ryan, why don't you take first crack at that?
Well, I think it's really interesting because first and foremost, for the depth side of everything, in the ideal world, I would say it would be Brandon Joseph and maybe Ramon Henderson is playing the majority of snaps. And you have guys like Houston Griffith and DJ Brown who have played a good amount of football now. Houston's obviously played a lot of football and DJ played a lot, especially down the stretch this past season. I really liked what I saw Xavier Watts down the stretch. So I don't know if I honestly haven't thought about it enough. To be honest with you, I'm still kind of wrapping my mind around it because I saw a lot almost with him down the stretch. But either way, you have two potential dynamic, quote unquote, safeties, right? And then you have two very solid depth pieces. So I think just for the depth chart of everything, it's really exceptionally, I think it's something that you're going to look forward to. You know the answer to that one.
So here's the thing for me, and Ryan, we didn't catch a lot of what you said. It was kind of broke up on us a little bit, but I got a sense of it of you got the two veterans in Griffith and DJ that kind of can fill a role. You've got Brandon Joseph and Ramon Henderson. I think Ramon's going to get a lot better in year 2.
Yeah, me too.
I think his range and athleticism, if the mental part can continue to click for him, the athleticism and range is there. He'll stick. I think he's going to make a lot more plays on the ball. You've got a guy like Brandon Joseph who provides leadership back there as well. He provides more playmaking than Hiestand and DJ by a lot, in my opinion. And then it's okay. So what about, you've got Xavier Watts, you've got Justin Walters, right? I mean, you've got those two talented players. Well, to me, this now, so here's a little something for everybody. It's not a given that Xavier Watts is going to go back to safety this year, because my understanding is that Xavier understands that he gets to play wherever he wants to play.
Yeah.
Meaning if Xavier decides when he gets back next week that he wants another crack at receiver, he's going to get a chance to sit down with Coach Reese and the new receivers coach and go play. If he wants to stay at safety, they want him back at safety because they think he can be a really, really good safety. I think if Xavier Watts stays at safety, you're going to see a 3-man rotation primarily of Brandon, Ramon, and Xavier Watts, because just because Hiestand and DJ are coming back now, part of that is because they're finishing up their degrees and they're going to go through spring ball. If one of those guys is 5th on the depth chart at safety, it's not guaranteed that he's going to stay. Remember, Notre Dame didn't get Nick McLeod till May. They didn't get Kane Madden until the summer. There's going to be kids that leave post spring from Notre Dame and other places. That's just how the transfer portal works. So if Xavier goes back, then to safety, then he's going to be part of that conversation. If he decides he wants to play receiver, honestly, this is just me talking, right? This is Brian Driscoll's opinion. This is not scoop. This is not intel. This is me not telling you what Notre Dame wants. This is me talking. I personally would rather move him back to receiver, and just listen to me first, right? Just listen first, okay? Because I already see I can already see the typing. No, don't move the kid. This is 100% only if that's what Xavier wants. If Xavier wants to go back to receiver, I'm absolutely doing it because, number one, new position coach. There's going to be a level of respect there, okay? And Vince, are you saying that I'm frozen?
No. Ryan
okay,
was.
Sorry, I got a text from you. I was like a little confused.
I put it in the group message. That's my fault.
No worries. If Xavier wants to go back to receiver, I'm giving him that chance because, number one, you have holes at receiver right now in your roster. It's going to be a lot hard. Look, there's not a receiver at a Northwestern out there, right? And so there were some hurdles they had to go through to get Brandon Joseph, who's from Northwestern.
You're right.
Okay. Undergrad transfer, still a work in progress for Notre Dame from an admission standpoint.
Right.
Okay. There's two talented wide receivers on your football team, new potential receivers on your football team named Xavier Watts and JoJo Johnson.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
And they're at positions now. Corner numbers is not your problem at corner. It's developing people. And JoJo's coming off of a knee injury where I'm not sure how he's going to be able to develop there. You've got Cam Hart coming back. You've got Clarence Lewis coming back. You've got, Ryan Barnes, Phillip Riley, potentially Tariq Bracy. To me, if you're going to move JoJo and Xavier, then you keep Tariq Bracy. You bring him back for a 5th year. You've got the room. And so you've got the potential there with Brandon Joseph, gives you so much more flexibility with the emergence of the rising sophomore corners, with Jaden Mickey and Benjamin Morrison coming in, who I don't think they've gotten enough attention and love from Notre Dame fans on how good of a duo that is as commits, especially Benjamin Morrison. Brian Smith, who's been on our show before, just did a podcast of he ranked the Notre Dame signees. You know who his number one commit in the class was? I kind of teased it a little bit there. Benjamin Morrison. That's who he thinks has the highest ceiling in this class. Now, I don't have Benjamin quite that high, but Vince, I thought he was a top 100 player.
Right.
So the numbers are there. You got two really athletic kids who are excellent high school wide receivers. Xavier Watts is a guy that we all know can play receiver. If they're willing, if they want to do that, I'd move them and just, then focus on coaching up the young, because you got plenty of numbers in the secondary now with Brandon Joseph back.
Right, exactly.
You don't necessarily need Xavier Watts anymore. And so to me, that's what I'd look into. Now, you could say that puts you into some issues in 2023 if Brandon goes pro, because you lose him, DJ, and Hiestand. But that's why you're recruiting Peyton Bowen. Then you've got Justin Walters. You've got Ramon will have another year. Like, that's why you've got Adon Schuler. You keep going, Caleb. That's where recruiting is going to have to come into play, right? But that's what I would do, Vince. Is that depth to me gives you more flexibility where maybe you don't need to go transfer portal now for a receiver. Move those two kids, get one high school kid. Now all of a sudden you're set at wide receiver, in my opinion. So that's another reason why the Brandon Joseph commitment could have an impact beyond just adding a really good football player to safety. I think this could start a domino effect of impacting the roster where they don't have to keep scouring the portal for kids that they hope that they can get through the admissions office or wait till May for grad transfers. Because here's the reality too. School starts in about a week for Notre Dame.
Yes, that's right.
The odds of them getting a transfer that can then play in the spring is not real high. Brandon Joseph will be here in the spring. That would allow them to move Xavier Watts. And here's the other thing. Joe Wilkins probably is not going to be able to go through spring.
Right.
Avery Davis is not going to be going through spring.
Nope.
There's going to be plenty of opportunities for Xavier Watts to get a ton of reps and impress people. Tobias Merriweather is not an early enrollee.
Right.
You're going to have 4 healthy scholarship receivers in the spring.
He's going to get plenty of reps.
And he's going to get a ton of reps.
And my thing would be, and I agree with you wholeheartedly, it's got to be his decision. Like, if he wants to be on offense, then that's great. It has to be his decision.
Yes.
My personal opinion is that his ceiling is higher as a receiver than it is as a safety.
Agreed.
I think he could be great at safety. I'm not taking away anything from him at safety. What I'm saying is I think his ceiling is higher at wide receiver.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. But if you're going to make that move, if you as a group have decided that that's the move to make, you need to do it before spring.
Right.
Because he'll have the whole spring to work, man. And that is so important. Like you said, 4 scholarship wide receivers, that's a ton of reps, of reps. So this is the time you need to do it.
Right. And so we'll see. We'll find out over the next week or two kind of how that goes. But again, that's just that's me. That's how I would do it.
And who's going to be the wide receiver coach, right? Like, all of those things matter. I mean, that's why he moved in the first place, right? I mean,
right. And now that's gone. Now, people have asked about Lawrence Keys the third. Lawrence Keys is not coming back. He has not been approached about coming back. He has not approached Notre Dame about coming back. I think that ship has sailed. He's going to start class here in the next couple weeks at Tulane. I just don't see that one. I don't even think that's like in the works. I don't think, and Larry says it's shocking to me they have no transfer receivers. Larry, I'm telling you, it's not easy for them to get receivers. They have kicked, somebody says kicking tires. Taj Harris is wide receiver. Guys, they've kicked a lot of freaking tires. They're going to have some broken toes with the number of tires they kicked. Notre Dame's admissions has not yet caught up with the realities of modern college football yet. Now that they will, but these aren't things you just snap your fingers and things change. You've got to have some rules and some things in place that to make sure you're not violating NCAA standards by just arbitrarily changing your own standard. There are some things there's a process you have to go through. You don't just snap your fingers and the rules have changed. And this all happened so quickly with the NCAA, the 1-year transfer thing. It's all kind of just came out of nowhere. Notre Dame is reacting slower than they should to it. But the reality is they can't just go do what other schools are doing right now and just take any receiver.
Right, exactly.
Right. And that's what I'm saying. It's going to be hard. And that's why they need to strongly consider, if he's willing to do it, why I think moving Xavier Watts helps. Because here's the thing about Xavier. He knows the offense. He's dynamic. He still has 3 years of eligibility left. And he's a freaking playmaker, in my opinion. I've been saying freaking a lot lately, and I'm sorry, Vince. That's just really an uneducated way for me to communicate, but I'm just really excited. Okay?
I can tell.
But he's a really talented player. you're not moving him to fill a depth need. You're moving Xavier Watts if
So
you were to do that because he can be a playmaker.
Right, exactly.
And that to me is kind of where I would want to see that. And so again, that would have to be 100% Xavier's call. And no, I don't think he could play both. I think he needs to be able to go to position that he wants to play and just play it. So that would be my thing. But it's a tempting thing to think about.
You're right. And it would be the problem with today's football and the way things go. You'd have to be a full-time starter on one side of the ball and like a spot package guy on the other side of the ball.
And it's usually you're a defensive player that you teach 3 or 4 routes to. It's not often the other way around unless it's a freaky talented player. And we've seen that. I'm trying to think. There was a receiver, maybe it was Michigan State. I'm trying to remember. There was a receiver in the last 10 years that they just started having a bunch of depth problems, and they just moved that kid over, and he was just like locking people down. It was like because he just went up and played press. Like, okay, I'm just more athletic.
It's like backyard. It's like playing in the parking lot.
Who it was? Somebody's gonna remind me, and they're gonna put something in the chat, and that they're gonna remember who it was. But to me, those are the things that I look at, Vince, that kind of get me fired up. Like I think with Brandon Joseph, there are some things that are kind of falling into place here that lessen the need. Plus, there's some 2022. Somebody asked the question about Larry asked any high school receivers left for February. Yeah, there are some. There's some guys Notre Dame is looking at the high school ranks. There's a kid named Lowe from Oregon who's committed to Utah, didn't sign. They're looking at him. They just offered a kid, I think it's Caleb Douglas from Texas. They're talking to Stephon Johnson from Texas. There's some receivers they're talking to. I believe it was Tom Loy that has reported that Justice Lowe might be visiting somewhat soon. So there's kids out there. So to me, get a high school kid that can play. And I've seen Stephon Johnson and I've seen Lowe. I have not seen Caleb Douglas yet. Lowe can flat out play. I mean, that kid is legit good. Like to me, Johnson and Lowe are both better than Amorian Walker. Vince, and you'll have to watch their film this weekend and let me know.
No doubt.
But to me, Lowe can play. And that kid to me is a 4-star player. He reminds me a lot of Will Fuller in the high school version of Will Fuller. So I liked Will Fuller coming out of high school. I didn't think he was going to be the star he was because he went from 4.5 to 4.3, right? But Will Fuller was a really good football player coming in. He was a top 200 caliber player coming out of high school. I think that kid reminds me a lot of Will Fuller. He's kind of a TJ Jones, Will Fuller type of receiver. I'll take that in a heartbeat. He's committed to Utah. I know a couple other schools are talking to him. I don't know who else he's looking at. I'm not familiar with his recruitment other than I know that Tom reported that he's going to visit. I've watched his film. I'm trying to get Ryan and Sean, we're trying to get in touch with them and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where those are the guys they've been in contact with. And obviously there's a pecking order in that group, but to me, I agree with you, Katie. I think he's really good. Very underrated player. I was surprised. I'm like, is this kids that haven't signed? I'm going to watch the film and, whatever. It's going to be some kind of kid you're adding for depth. And I'm watching Lowe and I'm like, dude, like he's one of those 5 clip guys, Vince, right? Like after 5, if a guy doesn't jump out after you for 5 clips, then you're like, okay, he's going to be a solid. He's a kid you watch 5 clips. You're like, okay, I'm going to keep watching because this kid can play. But yeah, this kid can play.
It's still amazing to me when kids put together their highlight film that they don't put their most athletic and dynamic plays up front. Like,
yes,
I'm turning it off, man. Exactly.
Yeah, he's really good. I like that kid. Now I'm going to watch Caleb Douglas this weekend. I haven't had a chance to see him yet. So we'll talk about him this week because we're going to have some recruiting stuff coming up this week. But if you add Xavier Watts to that mix, a JoJo Johnson to that mix, because remember, Vince, I liked JoJo coming out of high school.
I know you did.
I made phone calls.
Underrated.
I made phone calls to friends of mine in the coaching business saying, "You got to look at this kid." I've maybe done that 2 or 3 times my entire life, right? Where I try to push a kid onto friends of mine in the coaching business. And fortunately for me, for Notre Dame, they didn't listen to me because otherwise he'd be on scholarship at some other Power 5 school instead of being at Notre Dame.
Right.
So fortunately for Notre Dame, they all passed on him until it was too late, and Notre Dame got on him. Because I think the kid can play.
Right.
And so, you've got look at the spring, you're going to have Colsey, you're going to have Styles, you're going to have Jaden Thomas, you're going to have Braden Lindsey, right? You add Xavier Watts to that mix. Then in the summer, you get Tobias Merriweather. Then Avery Davis and Joe Wilkins come back from injury. Then you add Lowe and maybe JoJo Johnson, and all of a sudden the receiver depth chart's looking pretty darn good.
Right, exactly. Because look, you got 3 positions, and you're 3 deep at each position plus. I mean, that 9 is ideal because you're 3 deep at every position, right? You're 3 deep, and so you can sustain some injuries and things of that nature if necessary. But I think 9 is the number, and they're knocking on the door right now, and they have every possibility of getting there. So I'm less and less worried about the wide receiver position as we move forward.
Because either A, they're going to get someone who's good from the outside, or B, they're going to have guys that can move. And so I think they're in a good place. And Vince, I haven't blocked anyone or kicked anyone out of the chat today, but the Sunset Kid is pushing my buttons, Vince. He's pushing my buttons. He says, Brian Van Gorder to coach receivers from my intel. Hey, you know what? That's very well played, my friend. Very, very, very well played. I appreciate the good laugh. That was good. But you know, Vince, it's again, there's still a lot. It's been a good offseason so far. You know, getting Foskey and the Ademilolas back, landing Brandon Joseph. You get Harry Hiestand back, and that's what we're going to talk about next is Harry Hiestand. You've got some big-time coaches that have shown at least some interest, and now whether or not there's interest, right? And then there's signing on the dotted line that I'm leaving where I'm at, right? Those are two different things. And, you know, to me, there's still work to be done.
Sure.
But you're certainly off to a great start from a personnel standpoint. But as we just got done talking about with all the safety, corner, receiver stuff, there's still a lot of work to be done.
Absolutely.
And, of course, Jarrett Patterson still has a decision to make as well. But it's not just players.
Exactly.
Yes, and you tell your children that we say hello as well.
Figured we were transitioning, so it's a good time to say hello to the kiddos.
We're going to talk about the coaching stuff and Coach Hiestand next, but I did want to get to some super chats, Vince.
We do have a few lined up.
A bunch of super chats, so I wanted to kind of get to some of those, and I'm going to try to find here where we left off with these. Here we go. Lane Roy with a super chat. Thank you, Lane. Says, hey, guys, I'm about to buy my first IB merch. What do you recommend? Hat, hoodie, or sweats? My answer would be yes. Here's what I would do. I would honestly recommend, because here's the thing. If you've signed up to the Irish Breakdown website, okay, if you have signed up, find the email that I sent you thanking you for signing up. In there is a promo code that you can use in the merch store. If you signed up monthly, you get a 10% off your entire purchase. If you signed up for the annual membership, you get 20% off. So what I would do is I would use that 10 or 20% off, or if you haven't signed up for the message board, click on the link below, sign up. I'll send you the email and you'll get that promo code, get 20% off your whole purchase if you sign up annually. And then I would get a hat, a hoodie, and a shirt, or a hat, a hoodie, and sweats. I
didn't even know we had sweats.
We do. They're super comfortable. And they're embroidered on their Vince. So they're not like, they're not printed on. They're embroidered on.
Put me down, because
they're like this. They're not the t-shirts that are printed on.
Yeah, like this one. I got you. Exactly. I got you. Yeah, but
they're super comfortable inside. Yeah. Yeah, you just shoot me a text, buddy. It's the beginning of the month, so we've got the orders that I can make.
Absolutely.
So that's what I would do. But yeah, if you can only do one, it's January 8th, unless you live in Florida or Southern California. Anywhere I would say go
south
hoodie.
Of the Mason-Dixon line.
Go hoodie.
Yeah. I'm a hoodie guy all the way. I was going to recommend hoodie. I mean, I love a good hat. Don't get me wrong. But I will tell you that the new hoodie that's on there, because I have two. I have like an original that I don't think ever made it to the store, and I've got the one that's on there now. It is so comfortable. So comfortable. I highly recommend it.
Yeah. Michael S. with a super chat. Thank you, Michael. He said, wanted to ask you this yesterday. Do you think Michigan with Harbaugh has turned the corner and real Big Ten leader in recruiting and on the field? No. I mean, to me, this is not a whole lot different than Michigan State making the playoff in 2015. They have to prove they can do this consistently. And if you watched what's happened to Michigan this offseason, every kid that we're excited about coming back for Notre Dame, their version of that left. The NFL. Exactly. They lost Hutchinson, Ajabo. They lost their running back Hassan Haskins. They lost Dax Hill. They're losing a ton from their team. And honestly, they had a great year, but they were not as good as the final record, in my
Right.
opinion. So
Right.
1 year doesn't do it for me.
Yeah.
Beating Ohio
Season
State once in a
consistency.
decade doesn't make you,
Right.
you've emerged, you now own things. You got to do it with a little
Own
bit of
things.
consistency,
That's
in my
great.
opinion. Right, Vince?
Yeah.
Lucas Chapman on a super chat. We have all the talent on the roster now to push for playoff next season. Just imagine having better coached O-line and receivers. These next two chats we're going to get to, and then we're going to dive right into the topic because I know you got to go, Vince, and I want to get your opinion on this.
Yes, sir.
Sean Stewart also says the O-line group better get ready because Coach H is going to beat that Quinn stank out of them. And wow.
I mean, I love it. I'm not going to lie to you.
Yeah. Vince, obviously, this isn't new to anyone that's part of this chat. We've been telling people for a while that this was going to happen. But, man, what a crazy turn of events we've gone through the last 2 months. Because 2 months ago, we were asking about, can maybe Harry Hiestand come back? I'm like, guys, it's not going to happen.
Never going to happen.
I think at one point in time, I was like, look, Harry Hiestand ain't walking through that door, folks.
I think
right?
you actually said that.
I did. The whole Kevin McHale, Larry Bird, and Kevin McHale. I mean, Danny Ainge saying that about Larry Bird and Kevin McHale because it wasn't going to happen. Right?
Exactly.
Brian Kelly was the head coach. He wasn't coming back. Harry Hiestand was telling everybody that I knew that knew him that he was not coming back. He was gonna keep coaching, but it was coach individual players, coach coaches, work the clinic circuit, all that kind of stuff. He wasn't coming back. And then when it was announced that Marcus Freeman was the new head coach, people I repeated what my intel was. It was about a day or two later that we broke on our board because we broke that news that, hey, Harry Hiestand reached out to Notre Dame and said, I'd like to come back. Almost 48 hours after
it was
Brian Kelly had left.
And that's when we told you guys about it.
Yeah.
And it was, at the time, I just want to be involved. It could have been an analyst role.
Right.
It could have been as the position.
Well, that's what we thought. But
right.
I have since found out that he came back and said, I want to coach the O-line.
I want to be the guy. Okay, good. Okay.
Yes. So it's been an interesting evolution. We have talked about it on the board. It came down to two guys. Hiestand ultimately was the direction they went. They've been working on contract for the last couple of weeks. That's all it's been about. We are now hearing that is done. That's what the people in the national media were responding to yesterday when they were reporting that that's what Notre Dame was doing. They're finalizing the contract now, it's a deal. Also, if you remember the message board, we reported last night that it looks like Chris Watt is also set to return to Notre Dame as some sort of either analyst or it probably won't be as a GA, but it'll be sort of an analyst. Now, I've heard a lot of good things about the current GA too, as well. I don't know if he's going to be back or not. I can't remember his last name. His first name's Trevor. If him and Harry Hiestand click and he stays and you've got Watt as a back office thing, you now all of a sudden have a really nice situation, which is important because right now you're slated to have 17 offensive linemen on your roster.
A lot of dudes to coach up as
one guy. And and if Chris Watt isn't a GA and he can't be on the field, you're going to need someone that you trust. And Harry Hiestand has always relied on his GAs to work with parts of the roster. He coaches the coaches as well. Now, there's a lot we're going to dive into this offseason about Harry Hiestand and his style. We had a question down there earlier, Vince, about this. But, man, it has gone from just the frustration of just, man, imagine if this group could get coached by Harry Hiestand and accepting the fact that Harry Hiestand wasn't walking through the door again to where now we're sitting here reporting that Harry Hiestand and Chris Watt are going to be back to Notre Dame next year, Vince. It's
nutty.
Pretty exciting time.
It's nutty in such a good way that, I couldn't be more excited because there's talent in that room. There's a ton of talent in that room. They just, I honestly, I think you're going to see a difference as soon as spring. I really do. Because he's going to start pounding into them the fundamentals. It's going to be all about being aggressive. It's going to be just a completely different mentality. And I think these young guys are just going to latch on to this coaching and thrive. And somebody had a question in the chat. Do you think Blake is going to take to the coaching?
Right.
Blake wants to be an NFL, a top pick in the NFL draft. He's going to take to the coaching. The history speaks for itself.
Right. And to a degree, are there some things I'd like to see Coach Hiestand say, hey, maybe you just slightly adjust this and this. Yes, that's going to be part of his evolution. I would hope that he would at least be somewhat open to that because great coaches understand that I don't coach this guy the same way that I necessarily coach that guy. But I do think Blake needs to be pushed because Blake has special talent.
Yeah.
And if he allows himself to really be pushed and pushed and pushed beyond what he thinks he's capable of, that's how Harry Hiestand got the most out of Quentin Nelson. That's how he got the most out of Ronnie Stanley and Mike McGlinchey. Ronnie Stanley didn't like it. Ronnie Stanley did not like Harry Hiestand's coaching style. He's made several comments. He's been in the NFL about that. But you know what? He at least took it, though. He didn't like it, but he responded to it, and he became a top 10 pick.
Right.
So I don't care if you like it or not. It's like there's guys who I've talked to former Notre Dame players that I hated Lou Holtz my entire career at Notre Dame. But I did what he told me to do because I wanted to play. Now looking back, I'm so glad I listened because it made me a better player, made me a better man. I see now why. I don't care if they like it or not. I just care that they do what he says to do. Because if they do what he says to do, then they're going to be great players.
And I want to address somebody else's comment. And it's way back, but it says we need to get Harry Hiestand mic'd up for practice.
Oh my gosh!
Every other word will be like you're not going to be able to get much audio out of that.
I'd be curious if he'd be able to, because every coach knows you're being mic'd. Right?
That's true.
That's true. Like Brian Van. Everybody would tell me about these horrible things that Brian Van Gorder would say at practice, and like his first year, I was like, I didn't see that. I mean, he's pretty quiet in practice. Well, then once the school year starts, and remember, Vince, we kind of walk up to the press conferences while they're finishing up practice, and then you could hear him saying just awful things on the practice. You're like, okay. Because like they're behind the gated fence as we're walking into the press conference thing, and we can hear them, the coaches talking. We just can't see them. And you can hear Van Gorder just yelling your things like, good Lord, I might have to punch a guy if he said that to me. You know what I mean? Like, I didn't mind being hard coaching, but you say that to me about my there's going to be some furniture moving in this place if you do that to me. But, that's going to be an interesting dynamic. I mean, look, we have to at least acknowledge that, right? These aren't guys that were guys that signed to play for Harry Hiestand knew what they were getting.
Correct.
These guys didn't sign up to play for that type of thing.
And it's
so
there's going to
be an adjustment with some of those guys.
It's a completely different style.
But Zach Martin didn't sign up for that either. Chris Watt didn't sign up for that either. Mike Golick didn't sign up for that either. They were here when Harry got hired.
True.
They bought in and became part of a team that went and played for national championship after going 8-5 for 2 previous years. So I think there's going to be enough Quentin Nelsons and Alex Barses and Robert Haineses and guys like that. Here's another example of great voices is going to be Liam Eichenberg. Liam Eichenberg did not like playing for Harry Hiestand when Harry was here. But when Liam Eichenberg was going into his final year and he needed somebody to help him become the best player he could be, you know who he went to? Harry Hiestand. Because Liam matured and he realized, okay, now I get what Coach Hiestand was trying to do. Right? And there was a different level of respect there.
Right.
So as long as they just listen, right? You don't have to like it, but listen and do what he's telling you to do, then I think that this line's going to have a chance to be really, because it is an incredibly, there's a lot of potential in this group, especially at tackle.
Yeah.
My
gosh.
Joe Alton, Blake Fisher,
Yes.
and whether or not Jarrett Patterson comes back or not, we'll see. But if he comes back and you got him anchor in the middle and you got those 2 young emerging tackles, boy, goodness gracious. You can start getting a little fired up about things, Vince.
Fired up.
There's no question about it. There's no question about it.
I'm a real fired up. So.
Now here's what we're going before Vince. Do you still have to go? Do you still have to be at soccer practice?
A couple minutes. It's a game. It's a game, but I got a couple minutes.
So I'm going to get to some super chats after
Please.
Vince leaves, but I want to address some other coaching stuff that we have heard. So we reported this on the Irish Breakdown message board last night. I think it was 2 nights ago. I've done these kind of late night intel drops on the board, and I can't remember like which days they are.
I wake up in the morning and it's like, oh, Brian's been busy. No surprise.
Oh, Brian's not sleeping again. All right.
Right. Exactly.
Thanks, Vince. You're not worried about me not getting sleep or taking care of myself. You're just excited about the Nuggets. What a friend you are.
I'm a fan like anybody else. I love my Nuggets.
So here's what we're hearing about the wide receiver position. So obviously no one has agreed to take the position yet. Obviously there's guys that Notre Dame is pushing for. The 2 names that I'm hearing the most about are Holman Wiggins, who is the wide receivers coach at Alabama, and Jamarcus Shepard. I keep saying Jacoby Shepard, but he was a different player. Jamarcus Shepard, who is the wide receivers coach at Purdue. Now, to me, either one of those guys are grand slam home run hires, in my opinion. People have asked about Holman Wiggins. Would he be legitimately interested in Notre Dame? I'm told that he is. Being interested, however, and signing on the dotted line to leave Alabama are two different things. I don't think it's gotten to that level. I just think it's more of just a, hey, once my season's over, we'll talk kind of thing. I think it's where it's at. There's been a little bit more conversation with Jamarcus Shepard. And look, you look at what the Purdue receiving corps, he recruited Rondale Moore, recruited David Bell, coached those guys up.
Right.
Vince, you're familiar with him. He's a heck of a receivers coach. I mean, talk about
he has made more like elite type guys out of nothing than a lot of guys in the country. I've been impressed with what he's been able to do with the guys that are on his roster. Because look, Purdue's not pulling in 4- and 5-star receivers.
And the ones they get though, Rondale Moore was and David Bell was. And look what they did.
That's true.
They were studs in college. Right. So the few times he gets that kind of guy, they become really good players. You know, like David Bell this year, 93 catches, 1,286 yards in 11 games. Milton Wright, 57 catches for 732 yards. Jackson Anthrop, 53 catches for 575 yards. Brock Thompson, anybody ever heard of any of these guys? 30 catches for 457 yards. Right. I mean, you look at what he's been able to do with not really having great talent and David Bell's had 2,000-yard seasons in 3 years at Purdue. That's a really good coaching job right there. And you just watch them play and you see a group of guys that are really well coached. They know how to get open. They know how to run. And remember earlier in the year when I was talking about if Tommy Rees wants to learn from another coach, instead of looking at NFL guys, he needs to watch Jeff Brom. Because Jeff Brom's a college coach, not an NFL coach, but he's a pro-style pass game guy.
Right.
Well, now you could have a chance if you're able to get a guy like Jamarcus Shepard or Holman Wiggins. The thing I like about both of them, too, besides the fact they're great teachers, like people say, well, Bama gets elite players. Yes, they do. But those elite players know how to play. They don't just out-talent people.
Right.
That's what Notre Dame has been doing. They know how to play. They know how to stem. They know how to manipulate on top ends. They know how to the proper route angles out of if the safety's here, I'm breaking my route off there. I mean, they know how to play. They know how to time up mesh routes. They do all that stuff beautifully well beyond just being talented, right? That's not talent. That's coaching. They're incredibly well coached. Brian Hartline's unit's incredibly well coached. Jamarcus Shepard's units are incredibly well coached. And so to me, if you're able to bring that in there, but the thing is they're both pro-style systems, which fits Tommy Rees wants to be a pro-style, he is a pro-style pass concepts. So that fit theirs too, Vince. It's not just that they're doing a great job, but they're teaching air raids, routes and air raids, because that's different. I don't want an air raid receivers coach because they don't really teach routes. They line up on one side of the ball. They play right-footed or left-footed. Like, it's a different deal. These guys are going to know how to coach advanced, like they're teaching trigonometry to the receivers at Purdue and Alabama.
Right.
Where air raid coaches are not getting past algebra 2. You know what I mean? Or algebra 1. It's just the type of system it is. And that to me is an important part of this fit too. So that's where we're at. Again, neither one of those guys have agreed to it. I don't even believe either has necessarily been offered a job at this point in time. I just know that those are guys that right now Notre Dame is targeted as the top choices.
And Marcus Freeman's being smart about slow playing it to a degree because look, the head coach at Ohio State, that's kind of up in the air right now.
Right.
Alabama plays in 2 days. I mean, their season's not over yet.
I don't think he's slow playing it because there's nothing you can do when Alabama's still playing, right? It's just more about taking advantage of the fact that this isn't. But, I think that what I like about it, Vince, my takeaway is I love the fact he's shooting for big fish.
Absolutely.
If they say no, they say no, but I can guarantee you they're not coming if you don't ask.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. What's the worst thing they could say? No.
Yeah, exactly.
That's pretty much what you probably anticipate when you go talk to Heartline. I mean, but you at least
still ask because he's a friend.
Absolutely.
I mean, and just so people know, it's not that Marcus Freeman necessarily believes Brian Hartline's the best coach in college football. They were teammates. They're friends. That's why that's the guy he wanted.
Right.
And from what I'm told, he views Holman Wiggins and Jamarcus Shepard also someone he knows as elite position coaches.
Right.
I'm told that Tommy Rees likes both of those guys too. So that's just what I'm told. I don't know that one as confidently as I know Marcus Freeman's opinion, but I'm told that that's where we are. And I mean, that's exciting, right? I mean, to think about to what Notre Dame could be like if all of a sudden you've got an elite offensive line coach and an elite receivers coach with what Tommy Rees can do, with what Lance Taylor can do, with what John McNulty has proven to be able to do at tight ends. You start getting really excited about what this offense can be now, but that's all fine and dandy. But right now we know Hiestand's there. We don't know who the receivers coach is going to be. So now it's up to Coach Freeman to go, I mean, you went fishing, you're fishing for big fish, right? But now you got to reel them in.
Absolutely.
Right? Because you don't want to go fishing for big fish and then you end up taking home a bluegill. You just, I'm not an expert fisherman, but I know that if I'm out there fishing for catfish and all I get is a couple bluegill, I'm probably not going to be super excited about that one. So that's going to be the final piece to this thing is, hey, it's great that you've identified these stud coaches. It's time to go get them. One thing I'm not going to talk about is the D coordinator position, because right now it has been so eerily quiet. The one thing I am confident in is I do believe they're looking to go outside the program for the defensive coordinator. I don't know who that's going to be. I think a lot of the names that are out there are more about those agents pushing those names than they are anything else.
Right.
Some of them. But there are some guys that I've heard, but I haven't heard from close enough sources to throw them out in a public forum like this. And I haven't put them on the message board either. I mean, in an official type of post, because honestly, I'm not going to just hear something from someone who heard something from someone who heard something from someone and pass it off as intel. That's not what we do here, which is why our intel's right a lot, because we're going to give you as close as we can. And I just haven't been able to get anything close enough to legit names for D coordinator that I'm comfortable putting my name on. So I wish I did. I'm going to keep trying, but that's where we are. So I just wanted to pass on, because I know that's a question I get asked a lot as well. Who's going to be the D coordinator? No idea.
Yeah, right. Absolutely.
No idea. The only thing I can say with any confidence, I feel like it's going to be outside. That's the one thing I can say.
I think that's fair.
So, Vince, we got a super chat from David Hess here real quick that I wanted you to see before we leave, because it's just wanted to say thank you guys for all the excellent content.
Thank you, David. Thank you very much. That is awesome.
What were you going to say, Vince?
Well, there was a bunch of chat over there, and I don't know if you saw it. Everybody's speculating whether I'm going to coach high school football or asking me to coach high school football at their school in Indiana. I can safely say this. I am not coaching high school football anytime soon. I could if I wanted to, but I don't want to because my son plays high school football.
And why are you all trying to convince Vince to leave IB?
I know I wouldn't be able to do this as much at all.
See, this is people from other. These are plants from other podcasters that are trying to break us up. Vince, that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. I don't actually believe that.
I know. Kidding, I want to watch my son play. He's only a sophomore, or going to be a sophomore in the fall. He plays soccer and football, and I want to watch my kid. So that's.
And Vince and I talked about this. This is why we really feel God has blessed us, and why we did the thing on Thanksgiving. We feel blessed because the timing of when this all happened, when I got my chance to launch my own site. And I told Vince when I launched it, I said, just when your contract's up, just. But the timing of it's really worked out great because right when his son's going to high school, it's really been excellent. And
it was perfect timing because I wanted to get out of the coaching and I wanted to be able to watch him. And it's like everything. It was like the stars all lined up, and it was awesome.
So Vince isn't going anywhere, and all y'all are trying to tell him to go somewhere else. Knock it off.
Okay? Yeah, right. But I do have a soccer game that starts in 20 minutes, so I do have to get going. But everybody, it was wonderful. A little IB after dark. I love hanging out with everybody.
I got some more super chats and questions I want to get to. So have a good one, Vince. Yep. Say good luck to Dylan. All right. Ashley Hill with a super chat. Thank you for that, Ashley. Great work. Love your stuff. Your honesty and integrity in your breakdown we have it down here, unmatched. So thank you for that, Ashley. I appreciate that very, very, very much. Vince actually saw that and got a good kick out of that. So I appreciate that very much. We have some more super chats down here. Josh Phillips, any news on the DC internal or external? Josh, thank you for your super chat. The only thing that I can tell you with any sort of somewhat confidence is that we do believe it's going to be an external hire. Beyond that, I just don't have enough good intel to share. And if I did, and I've heard all the names that everybody else has heard, and whether it be someone repeating that but it's just not enough. Like somebody brought up Derek Mason. I've heard that name, but just not from a close enough source to where I feel comfortable putting out like any kind of official comment on it. So that's why I'm not. I mean, I've heard the same names you guys have had. It's been eerily, strangely void of knowledge, which makes me think that Marcus Freeman is kind of driving this and isn't really sharing a lot with a lot of people about what he's really leaning towards. Real Sports Talk with Alex. Anthony Hill to Notre Dame percentage kids are pushing. Yeah, I mean, he's a 5-star linebacker from Denton Ryan High School, which is in the same city as Denton Geyer. But, yeah, he is not he is obviously not from the same high school. But a kid that Marcus Freeman offered recently, a guy they're going to make a push for. Because here's the thing. Because you signed 4 linebackers last year, you really only need 2 in this class. And Anthony Hill and Phil Picciotti are 2 guys that I know Notre Dame loves a lot as that potential second linebacker. And I was told they'd go to 3 if it's the right 3. And I think Anthony Hill and Phil Picciotti are potential where they take both. But obviously it's very early when it comes to Anthony Hill. But it's nice to see them making a push. And Katie Keevers says Ryan sounds exactly like Mel Kiper Jr. It is eerie. He really does. I've talked to him about that before. I think that kind of annoys him a little bit. I've gotten the sense of it, but I still like to say it because he really does. He really does. Like just the inflection, just the accent, all of it. He does sound a lot like him, to be completely honest with you. All right, get down here a couple more super chats before we get out of here. And I appreciate everybody joining the show tonight. It's been a very lively show, a lot to be excited about. Matt, 2011 GT, fist bump for BVG. You guys are just trying to get me fired up tonight. Garth Cassidy said, Brian sent you 2 messages on the message board asking your opinion on some things, wondering if you saw. Garth, I did see. I just haven't had a chance to get to them yet. I know you asked something about the O-line and D-line. I will get to them later tonight. But just my wife got sick, so I think I gave her what she got what I had, so now she's sick. So I've been I had to make her dinner tonight and do some different things around the house today, so I haven't had a chance to get to that. And then with all the news breaking, that's kind of been my focus today, but I will get a chance to respond to those things tonight. I will definitely do that tonight. So got a couple more super chats down here that we'll get to. Tons of comments. I love all the comments you guys are making here. Love the discussion. Seems to be good, respectful stuff so far. Let me get down here to some more. Let me get all the super chats in. Freddie Nat Stadelbauer. How can our secondary hold up in Columbus? One proven corner and Abyss on the other side, playing against the 2000 Rams passing offense. We're in trouble, in my opinion. Number one, I think that we're overreacting to how good their pass game is. It is a very good pass game. But Notre Dame also, with Clarence Lewis as a freshman, played against Alabama, and he didn't get torched the way he did. He didn't get torched like that against North Carolina with De'Ami Brown and Sam Howell, that great pass offense they had in 2020. He had a really bad game. Do I want to go into Columbus with Clarence Lewis necessarily being that guy? No, but let's not act like that was the last game of his sophomore year, and he never played that bad before. Okay, so yes, it's a matchup concern, but number one, you've got a veteran safety now that can help take some of that off of him by playing over the top. You also are bringing back a great pass rush, because here's the thing that kind of, I guess, frustrates me a little bit. Everybody focuses on a small aspect of Ohio State's team, and it is the quarterback who's excellent. They got a great freshman running back, and even with the 2 receivers going pro, they've got some very talented receivers. Nobody talks about the fact that their offensive line was kind of mediocre. They just fired their line coach, right? If that tells you anything about what they think of their line play. Their defense sucked. So everybody's talking about how man, did you see how good their offense was in the bowl game? They beat Utah by what? 2 points? Because their defense gave up 45 3 points. They won 48-45. Their defense gave up over 40 points in each of their last 2 games. Notre Dame fans are losing their minds about how Notre Dame gave up 37 points to an Oklahoma State team that was better than Utah. And, we don't talk about that. They've got their own corner problems. They've got their own D-line problems. They've got their own linebacker problems. They got their own O-line problems. Ohio State is very good. I think it's going to be the best team that Notre Dame plays this year in 2022. But they're not the 2000 Rams. Okay? They are not a juggernaut. This is a team that didn't make the college football playoff because they got beat by Michigan and they got beat by Oregon at home. Okay, so this isn't 2018 Clemson. There's some matchups they got to worry about, and there's some matchups Notre Dame has to worry about. So, yes, they just landed an All-American safety who was part of a defense that held Ohio State to 22 points in the Big Ten title game 2 years ago. That's going to be a key piece of this. Ramon Henderson played DB or played safety for 5 games. He's going to get better. If Xavier Watts stays at safety, he's going to get better. He started the season a receiver, and you've got some young up-and-coming corners that are going to challenge and push guys. So I let's not act like what we saw against Oklahoma State was something we saw every single week this past year. Let's not forget that Notre Dame gave up 23 points the entire month of November. That wasn't an accident, right? So let's look at it as something that needs to get better, but not act like they're giving up 600 yards a game every game. They had a bad game in a bowl game. It happens. It's not acceptable. I don't like it. I'm not justifying it. I'm just saying it's not something we need to act like that's who Notre Dame is. I don't think that's fair. Sorry, the more I talk, I'm getting a little bit. I mean, you guys know how my throat's going to go, so we're not going to be here too much longer. But I do have some more super chats I want to get to. When you start hearing it crack like I'm going through puberty again, you know that it's about to go. So I apologize. Mike Nolan with a super chat. Is the delay on DC? First of all, there's no delay. These things take time. We've all said that. I mean, these aren't things that just happen overnight. I mean, we're at about the period last year by where Marcus Freeman was hired. So I mean, I'm trying to refine the specific date for Marcus Freeman being hired as the defensive coordinator last year. If you just give me a second, I'm going to find that. But I mean, this is about the time when that was, and he was the guy that they targeted from the beginning. And so I feel we need to kind of be a little bit patient. The coaches convention is this weekend. A lot of times these kind of hires don't kind of work themselves out until actually it was actually a year ago today. I'm looking at my admin. Marcus Freeman got hired on January 8th last year, and he was the target. So the point here is there's multiple targets this year, and it's going to take some time to kind of interview different guys and see you're it. So I don't think it's a delay. I think this is just part of the interview process, and I think he wants to make this the right hire. And here's the other thing, from what I can tell you with confidence, there are a lot of coaches interested in that job. And Jason Ademilolas and Isaiah Foskey coming back and Brandon Joseph coming in is going to make this an even more attractive job. So I don't think it's a delay. I think it's just going through the process the right way, and that's going to take some time to do. But to your question, Mike, is the delay on defensive coordinator that Marcus Freeman wants to find someone who pretty much operates the same system as he does? Could that be a tough find? Honestly, Mike, I don't know the answer to that last part. That's something I'm still trying to get an answer to, is because like some of the names I've heard don't run defenses like he's run. So is he trying to get those guys to come in and run his defense and adjust to his defense? Is he trying to find someone like a John Heacock who does run his something closer to his defense, or a Mike Tressel? I don't know the answer to that. And so that's kind of, once we figure out what's going on with the receiver coach position, and now that Harry Hiestand is kind of official, not official, but like it's a done deal now from what we understand, we'll start digging more and more into the D coordinator situation and hopefully get some answers for you, because there's some good candidates on the board that they can certainly look at. And there's about 3 or 4 guys I've heard that if they were to hire one of those guys, I'd be happy. But I just don't know if those guys are necessarily legitimate candidates. Andrew Burke with a super chat. Curious your thoughts, best and worst Notre Dame position coaches over the last 20 years. That's an easy one for me. I count coordinators as position coaches, but the worst offensive position coach Notre Dame had in the last 20 years was Charlie Molnar. He was terrible. And I would argue like second would probably be Rob Ianello. Defense, there was only one, and that is hands down Brian Van Gorder. He was awful. So yeah, he was pretty bad. But yeah, that is my answer to that. I do want to get to some other questions because I don't want to end on that. I feel like that's a not a very nice way for me to end the show. So let me see if I can find that. Toe Jam asks, is the new DC just going to be grooming Laurinaitis? No, I don't think that's the case. I think James Laurinaitis is being groomed to be a position coach, and then he'll be from the position coach. We'll find out kind of what kind of chops he has as a coach, but I don't think that's necessarily the case. It doesn't mean that won't happen, but I don't think that's something that they're pitching to defensive coordinators. I don't think that's something that position coordinators would be overly attracted by. Is like a selling point to come to Notre Dame and be part of that. So could it happen? Yes. Just like, could Chris Watt be groomed to replace Hiestand? Yeah, he could. I just haven't been told that that's the case. I'm even more confident saying, again, it wouldn't surprise me if that happened, but I just haven't been told that. I'd be even more surprised if that was the case. Whoever's the D coordinator has to come in and groom James Laurinaitis, who's not even going to be an on-field coach next year. I think I love that hire. I just don't think that's really something that I really think is just part of the conversation here. So, all right, get down to the last couple questions here. And I want to correct something here real quick. Somebody said that John Heacock is over 70 years old. Aaron Stack said that. He is not over 70 years old. I believe you are thinking of his brother is over 70 years old. So I believe his brother Jim is over 70 years old. Jim is 73 years old. That is John Heacock's brother, I'm pretty sure. So let me just find that here real quick. They're related somehow. I believe they're brothers. But yeah, Jim Heacock is 73. John Heacock, who is the current defensive coordinator at Iowa State, is 61. He's no spring chicken, but he's not set over 70 years old. They're two different people. So I just wanted to make sure that that we get that accurate. So all right. We do have a super chat down here that we will get to and end on here. And that is from LETMGR1, a Canadian friend of ours. Thoughts on the American Bowl today. That's what we forgot to get to. So number one, I watched it. I haven't gone back and watched it. But a couple things that stood out to me. Tobias Merriweather is really good, which Aiden Gabera's first step off the line was outstanding. I thought, I was actually surprised at how comfortable Billy Schrouth looked at center. The snapping needs work. He was consistent, but it didn't look pretty. But his ability to snap and step with power today was really impressive for a kid that's never really done that. And so I was impressed by that. I didn't see a ton of Ashton Craig and Emil Wagner, to be honest with you. I thought Tyson Ford looked good. I thought Josh Burnham looked athletic when he would just run, but he looks like what I've kind of said, which is he's still a raw kid that's got to learn the position, but he's really big and long and athletic. I thought Junior Tui Alamaka came downhill with authority. He looked real rangy, even a little bit rangier than I had seen on film. And somebody pointed this out. Gabera had a big hit today on a quarterback, and Tyson Ford had a sack today too. I mean, there's 10 guys in that bowl game from Notre Dame. I'm just trying to think of all of them. Nolan Ziegler looked really quick to the point of attack. They had him playing Mike linebacker at one point in time, but I thought he looked really good from what I saw today. But from what I could tell, I mean, everybody kind of looked like we kind of already thought. I'm hearing all, and somebody asked, did Emil Wagner play? Brandon asked, yeah, he played. He was number 59 on the team in green. So he played today. But yeah, he did. I didn't get a chance to see a lot from him. I didn't watch him a whole lot. I didn't watch the offensive lineman a ton other than Schrouth. I tried to watch the D linemen, the skill players, and I was doing other things. So I did record it. I'll go back and watch it later, but I didn't get a chance to really play. And the guy that asked the person that asked the question, Moore, Williams, and Moore look good too. Yeah, I mean, that's why Devin Moore ranked high and CJ Williams were highly ranked recruits on my board. I mean, they were losses. There's no doubt about it. You never heard me say, oh, well, CJ wasn't that good. He was really good. That was a loss. I wanted CJ Williams. Same thing with Same thing. Another, with Devin Moore. I mean, I wanted him. So Terry Washburn said, I'm not another podcaster trying to recruit Vince. I'm just selfish from my high school. Terry, we were just having some fun. I don't think any other podcasters are going to come during our show to try to recruit Vince. I just was having some fun with you guys, trying to have a nice, fun, relaxing night. Frank G asks, Peyton Bowen game breakdown video coming. Yes, we were going to do that tonight, Frank, but number one, Ryan was out of town, and I didn't know that when I made this, but me and Vince were going to do it. But with everything that kind of happened, we wanted to address this stuff first because it was a little bit more time sensitive. And so we plan to have a show either tomorrow night or our Monday show is going to be about Peyton Bowen's film. We're going to dive into some other 2023 film, talk about the 2023 safety class, the DB class in general, just some things we're hearing about guys to keep an eye on. Because we always do that when we do the breakdown of the commits, but since that happened on the day of the game, we haven't had a chance to have that full Peyton Bowen video. So we'll only dive into his film. We'll talk about him. We'll go over some film. We'll give our thoughts on him as a player. We'll talk about the safety because there's another safety that they're looking at still that I think could be a difference maker for sure because they are trying to go after one more safety, and that's Caleb Downs. So we'll talk about him as well. So, man, they're really after some big-time players. We'll talk a little bit about receiver recruiting. Just want to kind of dive into some film and talk about the guys on the board there. So we will definitely start. We're going to, now that Ryan's on board and he's kind of getting into it, he had an article on Jade Lamar today. He interviewed Jade Lamar, who's a 2023 running back. Him and Sean are going to started to kind of ramp up and build trying to build relationships to get content out. So we'll ramp up more recruiting stuff soon. We're going to have some of that this week, but early on it'll be more about analysis and just going over the board as opposed to specifics that will come as we get to know these kids more and talk to those kids more and stuff like that. So that's where we're at. And that will come soon. So whether that's going to be tomorrow, I'm going to try to make that happen tomorrow, Frank. If it doesn't happen tomorrow, we'll make that happen on Monday for sure. So that's why you need to hit the notification bell and subscribe and hit the like button, all those good things. So that way when we do a video, you'll know it's coming. And we try to give you as much advance notice tonight. And a great crowd tonight. I thank you all. Sign up for the Irish Breakdown message boards because a lot of stuff we talked about tonight, you'd already know. And we can get a chance to talk more about this stuff after the show and when the show's not going on. So everybody, thanks for being with us tonight. Thanks for taking some time out of your Saturday night. Thank your families for letting you spend some time with us tonight. And we will talk to you again very, very soon. Thanks for joining me and Vince and Ryan on the Irish Breakdown podcast.